Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be ranking all of the bosses, and this includes mini bosses in Minecraft dungeons from the easiest to defeat to the hardest to defeat. This list is based off of my experience and my opinion. You could rate these completely differently based on what your experience was, since we all get different artifacts and different weapons and armor that could seriously affect these boss fights. So if you have your own experience, I would be glad to hear you share it in the comments below. Coming in as the easiest boss in Minecraft dungeons, we have the Enderman, who is a mini boss. This boss has a mechanic where he will sometimes teleport in random locations around you, and other than that, he just deals melee attack damage to you. He actually deals pretty high damage, so while you want to make sure that you are attacking him a lot, you also want to make sure that you are dodging all of his attacks so that your health does not get chunked down. Now, don't get me wrong, this is absolutely the scariest boss in Minecraft dungeons. If you have faced him already, you know what I mean. You're just walking, you're walking in Minecraft dungeons, and then you go, you hear that sound, and then your screen goes blurry, and you want to exit out of Minecraft dungeons. And I still have that feeling every time I fight the Enderman, and I've probably fought him at least over 20 times. So, if we were ranking this on a scale based on how scary these bosses are, then this boss would come in at number 1, because I couldn't handle that. I think that Minecraft Dungeons did a great job with capturing how the Enderman is in Minecraft, and making him even scary with the screen effect that you get when you fight him. And I think that it's great to have this variety when you're playing, because you'll just be clearing a dungeon as normal, and then you run into the Enderman and you definitely wake up. Overall, this boss adds a great scare factor to the game, and he is definitely still tough to fight. Next up, we have the skeleton Horseman boss. So this boss spawns in a group of 4 different skeletons riding horses, and it is a mini boss. These bosses can do a lot of damage to you with their bows, and they move pretty fast, so sometimes it can be hard to catch them, or it can also be really hard to get away from them. However, their defense does lack, so if you can get to them, you should be able to chunk their health down pretty quickly. Just like the previous boss, the Enderman, I think this boss also adds some spice and variety to Minecraft dungeons, because this boss actually just pops out of nowhere. You don't expect it, you don't see anything, and then just 4 random horsemen are going to pop up on your screen. Now, in the gameplay in the background, I'm in Desert Temple, and I'm in quite a secluded hallway, so these bosses are not nearly as good as they can be, since they don't have a lot of space to run around in. But when they do have a lot of space, they can get away from you pretty easily, and they just keep on bowing you, and their bows deal a lot of damage. And for someone that has armor that's more offensive and doesn't give much defense, then this boss could be really difficult for them. You definitely have to know the movement mechanics in Minecraft dungeons pretty well to be able to fight this boss without any difficulties, because when you can just dodge every arrow they shoot at you, this is easy. But for players that are still adventuring through the game and everything's new to them, this can be quite a challenge. Overall though, I think that this boss is pretty easy to defeat. It only has one mechanic, which is just basically run and shoot. And if you are able to catch up to the 4 horsemen, which you usually are able to, you shouldn't really have any problems with cleaning them up. Next up is a mini boss slash a boss, the Evoker, and this is essentially a warlock. He actually has a few different mechanics. He can send out traps in 2 different ways that actually hit you a pretty decent amount if you are not ready for them. And also he summons some fairies that just chase after you, but they do not deal too much damage, and they also have a pretty low health pool. I think that when you're considering the mechanics of bosses, this boss has the best mechanics out of all of the mini bosses, just because he has a lot of variety, and you do have to constantly move around and dodge and attack, and there are a lot of elements in fighting this boss. This boss is a boss and mini boss, because you can fight him as a full-on boss when you are at pumpkin pastures, but you may run into the boss as a mini boss form anywhere, and he will be just as difficult as the regular boss. Overall, this is a boss that requires you to do a little bit of multitasking, killing the fairies, dodging his attacks, and also hitting him. And I think that this is a really enjoyable fight, but at the same time, after the first time that you fight him, you learn his mechanics, and it gets to be pretty easy to defeat him. Next up is the Redstone Golem, which is a boss and a mini boss. You can find it as a boss if you go to Redstone Mines, and then it can spawn at any other dungeon or even at Redstone Mines itself as a mini boss. And then it also has this ability where it will stop moving for a moment, and it will also not attack you during this time, and it will start summoning these redstone electricity charges, which if you run into, you will take a pretty good amount of damage. This boss is much more difficult when you have to fight it in the Redstone Mines boss room, because there's a lot of lava nearby and it becomes really hard to run away and kite the boss. And it's also harder not to run into the electricity redstone charges that the boss places down. So if I were to be ranking the boss version of this boss separate from the mini boss version, the boss version would be slightly more difficult than the mini boss, I would say, because of the conditions that you have to fight the boss in. But in general, most of the time you're just going to see this as a mini boss in any random dungeon, and it is not going to be nearly as hard to fight him as it is in the boss room. The main strategy here is just to keep kiting the boss and shoot it with your ranged weapon until it stops and starts summoning the electricity charges, which is when you want to move in and start dealing your melee damage to the boss. Overall, this boss may give you a tough time in certain situations, but if you are not fighting him in the boss room, the boss itself is not that strong. Next boss is a full-on boss, the Redstone Monstrosity, and he is a very, very slow boy. He's a big boy, but he's also a very, very slow boy. He has a few different mechanics. He can just smash the floor in front of him very slowly, and he gets up very slowly, but he can also summon some redstone cubes, which just start chasing after you, and they are pretty annoying to deal with sometimes. And then he can also just kind of fire some redstone block projectiles at you. The boss's melee attack mechanic is really easy to dodge. You're not really gonna have difficulty with that at all. The problems come in when you have to deal with the cubes that he summons, because then you have to start multitasking, and that's when we all start messing up a little bit. But if you just kind of separate yourself from the boss for a little bit and you work on killing the blocks and then you make your way back over to the boss, you shouldn't have too many difficulties. You want to make sure that you get into melee range with him as soon as you can after you kill blocks though, because he will just keep summoning them if you stay too far away, and that is going to make this boss fight way harder than it has to be. I mean, this is definitely a big boy. It takes some time to kill him unless you have a very powerful weapon, but for any average weapon, it's definitely going to take you a little bit to chunk down his health. Then we've got the bigger boy, the big boy number 2, the Mooshroom Monstrosity, which you can only fight if you unlock the secret cow level. This boss has a very slow melee attack and then also has 2 mechanics, the first one being where it will summon some mushroom cows, and then the boss activates the second mechanic when you are not in melee range of it. It will start firing these fiery mushrooms at you. The melee attack is very easy to dodge, it's very slow, and also the recharge time on the melee attack is pretty slow as well, so you definitely have a window of opportunity to deal a lot of damage to the boss during these time periods. You mainly just want to attack. When the melee attack starts, you roll away, it finishes, you roll back in, deal damage, and you keep on doing that. Sometimes the boss will start summoning mushroom cows, which aren't really that scary. They have some damage, they have some health, but if you kite them around a little bit and damage them up, they should die pretty quickly, and you can get back to damaging the boss again. Now, one thing to note, and I think that this is gonna separate the experience of some players from others, is that if you are not in melee range of this boss when you fight it, the boss will keep on summoning these fiery mushrooms and shooting them at you, and they deal a lot of damage and are very tough to dodge. And when you are in melee range, these never get shot at you. So it's just a completely different experience. I feel like those of you who have a bow build struggle way more with this fight. And I mean a crazy amount. It's like a different fight. As long as you stay in melee range, it is really easy to kill this boss. It does take some time because of the large health pool, definitely the largest health pool of any boss in the game. If you fight this boss in melee range, it's going to be pretty easy for you. It's just going to take a long time. But if you fight the boss in ranged range, then you're going to have a lot of difficulties, which is why this boss ranks so high up, because he completely eliminates the option to fight him from a range. And this can make it really hard for so many people to kill the boss, because I know that a lot of people have a bow build. The next boss, unfortunately, just does not have a name. I don't know, maybe we'll be able to get it in the leaked files one day or something like that. But as of right now, I'm not really sure what to call it. Anyways, the Nameless One boss has a few different mechanics, as I said. So the basic attack of this boss is just firing projectiles. They're these kind of necromancer bolts, you could call them. The first mechanic of the boss is that it can summon a skeleton army of skeletons that have shields and spears. And the second mechanic, but within this mechanic there are multiple mechanics, which is why I said there are a few with this boss. The boss basically teleports and then summons mirror images of itself that all shoot necromancer bolts at you at the same time, and sometimes all of the mirror images just fully surround you. The base attack of the boss is one of the stronger base attacks in the game. When you are first starting out, it's definitely going to be hard to dodge the attacks. They have a pretty fast movement speed while they travel in the air, and if you're not used to dodging them, you are most likely going to be hit by them. The boss's base attacks deal a lot of damage and move pretty quickly in the air, so for players that are just exploring this for the first time and fighting this boss for the first time, they are most likely going to have a hard time dodging all of these projectiles while keeping up damage on the boss. They're just going to be running in circles trying to keep on dodging all of the attacks. The first mechanic of the boss, where it summons the skeleton army, is pretty strong because the skeletons that it summons have a shield, so the first hit that you take against them will be completely negated. Only after can you actually start dealing damage to them. And then their spear has a really long range, extremely long range, and it can be hard to get to them unless you have a bow or some kind of stun. It's worth noting that the boss will not start summoning more until you kill all of the ones that have already been summoned, so I think it's a strategy to just keep on shooting the boss and not killing the minions. Maybe kill all of them but one or two, and then just keep on shooting the boss, just going around it, and that way you can clear it pretty easily. And then the final mechanic can get really crazy. When the mirror images are summoned, if you get a bad spawn on them and they spawn all around you, they can easily kill you so fast you won't even know what happened. All of the projectiles that the mirror images send are still definitely dodgeable, and most of the time, if you are already used to these projectiles, you will be able to maneuver your way around all of them. But I definitely like the complexity of this one mechanic with this boss. We don't see that a lot, and it's something that I love to see. Overall, this is a fairly difficult boss, a fun fight at that. I really enjoy the theme here. I love Desert Temple. I think it's a great challenging fight. The Corrupted Cauldron boss is next, which is in Soggy Swamp, and it has a couple of mechanics. Firstly, this boss has a melee attack. If you get close to this boss and you just stand still, the boss will attack you and it will move as well. The first mechanic of the boss is that it can summon a flame around itself every certain period of time. And then the other one is that it summons little purple slimes with a ranged attack. The melee attack that this boss has very rarely gets activated since you are moving around a lot. And the fire that spawns around it chunks your health. It does a lot of damage, and if you are not careful with that and you don't pay attention to when it is about to activate, you can easily die very quickly. With the second mechanic, I hate the pink-purple little slimes. I can't tell you enough, they're so annoying. It makes it so annoying to fight this boss. You just have these pew 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 everywhere, and they do little damage, but they don't have much health, but it all adds up, and they keep hitting you, and they just never stop, and there's so many of them, and it's so hard to dodge them. Yeah, definitely don't like that part of the fight if you all did not notice. But the thing about this fight is that you can just leave anytime you want. You can just leave and wait for all of your cooldowns to reset. I mean, I don't know, I'm guessing they did this on purpose, but that definitely makes it way easier to fight this boss. Whenever you're having trouble, just go back through the entrance and wait. And you know, if you're low HP, wait for your healing potion, use it up, maybe wait for it to come up again and then go in. But because of that space that you have and the ability to get away, that makes this fight a lot easier. But even with that in consideration, there are a lot of things in this fight that can just get you killed like that, and it's a consistent basis that this can happen too. These slimes deal a lot of damage. There are a lot of times when I fight this boss when I'm at 1 HP, it gets real intense, and the flames, if you try to melee attack the boss, you can get carried away with the melee attacks. You can get greedy, and then the flames just pop up and you're gone. You're gone. So this is a enjoyable fight, definitely challenging, and a new type of boss fight in this game where it just literally sits on one spot, but at the same time it still is able to defeat you. And finally, the number one, the most difficult boss fight in Minecraft Dungeons, the Arch-Illager / the Heart of Ender boss fight. This is the final boss fight of the storyline. There is of course still the secret cow level boss, but that doesn't really fall into the storyline. The whole story is that we are trying to defeat the Arch-Illager at the end of the game. This is a complex boss fight. So at first this game baits you. It makes you think, oh hey, this boss fight's so easy. Look at me, I'm killing the Arch-Illager, it's so easy. That's what we all feel like here. But then the game goes ahead and steps into phase 2, but let's talk about phase 1 first. It has 3 mechanics. The ranged attack is not too much to worry about. It moves pretty slowly and it doesn't even deal too much damage, so that's not the difficulty here. The more difficult part is with the troopers that the boss summons and the empowering. Because if the boss summons the ranged troopers, or Illagers rather, then they have the opportunity to one-shot you if you are not prepared for them. They have one-shot me so many times when I was running this. It's ridiculous. Also, the Redstone Golem can be summoned, and who doesn't like the Redstone Golem in a boss fight? Another mini boss in a boss fight. I think this may only be possible on maybe Adventure or Apocalypse, because when I was playing on default mode, I did not get this to spawn. I only got it to spawn when I was in Apocalypse, and maybe they just added this to make it more difficult after you complete default mode, just to add something cool to the mix. Okay, so you've killed the boss. Great. Good for you. No, you are not done, because you still need to kill the Heart of Ender, and that is where the crazy stuff happens. The boss has multiple mechanics. It can summon mirror images of itself that just breathe out beams out of their mouth of this crazy energy that the Illagers have. The second mechanic of the boss is that it leaves behind a shadowy trail when it moves, which will deal damage to you if you step on it. The third mechanic is that the boss can hurl fire at you. And the fourth mechanic is that the boss can summon a beam of chaos energy in an X shape. With the first 3 mechanics, we don't really see many problems. They just kind of add to the chaos of the boss fight, hindering your movement in certain areas and dealing some damage to you here and there. The main problem lies with the X-ray beam. That thing does an insane amount of damage, and it is pretty unpredictable as well. The boss does charge up when it's about to use it, but the effect sometimes can just land right on you right off the bat, and it deals an extreme amount of damage to you. really that's the main thing that you're trying to avoid the whole time when running this boss fight. There are some strategies out there that make this boss fight easier, but in general I think this is an amazing boss fight that takes a lot of skill and is the most detailed out of all of the other ones in the game, and I think that provides for a very challenging, enjoyable experience that I was not disappointed with coming into the last boss. So overall I think that this is definitely the hardest and also most fun boss in the game. The challenge brings a lot of joy, you know, when you beat the boss. That moment is amazing. Well, that was it, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed all of the bosses ranked from the easiest to defeat to the hardest to defeat. That was a fun list to make, and I hope you guys had fun watching it as well. 96% of you that watch my videos are not subscribed to me, so if you have watched, you know, a couple of my videos and you're returning, I would really appreciate if you could, you know, subscribe. Also leave a like, comment, and if any of you have ideas for what you would like to see next, make sure to let me know down in the comments below. I make sure to read through all of my comments, so I always see them. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace out.